What if you knew exactly how to build the business and life you want? Hey you, I'm Sarah Grace, host of the Victorious Podcast and coach to victorious women like you, building life on her terms. You won't find the hustle or grind around here. We do things different. Yes, we are committed to our business and we are committed to family, faith, and fitness. What does that look like? A 12-hour work week. No more. Freedom Fridays? It's a must. Being present with those we love and bringing God into all areas of life. I'm showing you how to understand your unique business strategy and how to align that strategy with God. Stick around. I'll make sure you know exactly what to do next. Hey you, this is Sarah Grace with the Victorious Podcast, and oh my word, I am fangirling with the girl that we have in the studio today. We have the amazing Rachel Nielson from the 3 in 30 podcast. And you're probably already saying, oh, Sarah, you don't even need to make me pause to subscribe to that podcast because I already do. I would assume most of you already know her extraordinary podcast, 3 in 30. If you don't have it, I'll give you 2 seconds to go pause this, go subscribe so that you can hear from her. Now, as you know, with my introductions, while I would love to sit here and give you a really well-scripted introduction on everything she's accomplished, I would rather be really selfish and tell you how I feel about her and what I have seen her do, because that is way more my style here. And let me tell you a couple of the ways that I was intrigued by Rachel Nielson early on. First, she was the first person that I felt like I came across on social media that was absolutely authentic. So Rachel, you want to know one of the first posts that I ever came across on your platform was when you talked about times in which I have met with a therapist, and you made a list of events in your life that had happened that had caused you to go to therapy. And I was like, who is this girl? Who is this girl? So that was really my first exposure, is like, oh my gosh, she is normalizing some of the ups and downs of life. I want to be friends with her. So I immediately followed her. I have luckily sat in the same room with her on a couple of occasions. And then I have also seen her in business. She's got an incredible journal called Flecks of Gold that all of you have to have. I'm going to get it in your pocket somehow. That's a journal for moms to be able to share their golden spiritual moments to then pass on to their kids. Most extraordinary product you've ever created, by the way. She's also the incredible co-creator with Monica Packer of the podcast You, which is all about monetizing podcasts. She is an extraordinary businesswoman. And she is also fearless in her ability to talk about things that normalize us. And I absolutely love that about you. So welcome the amazing Rachel Nielson from the 3 in 30 podcast, who's the most authentic person I know. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, that was the nicest introduction anyone has ever done for me. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I love what you're doing here. And I love your energy and your enthusiasm for your work. And just thanks for having me on.
Oh, this is a bucket list item for me, for sure. And we have to share the realities here that literally 12 minutes ago, your power was totally out when we were supposed to record. Yes?
Yeah. And not just my power, like my whole valley's power was out. And so I was like, I can't go to a friend's house. I can't go to my husband's dental office. And then the power came back on. So yeah,
here we are, meant to be. Well, can I just dive straight into it with you? Because we're going to talk about a ton of stuff here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is so amazing about what you do, and we're talking straight about entrepreneurship right from the get-go, is the fact that you have somehow monetized and created a financially successful business. I mean, I'm aware of those things. I'm not going to share them here on the air, but a financially successful business based upon things everybody needs to know: motherhood, gathering, womanhood, all that kind of stuff. How did you get the courage to charge for things that would benefit everybody, that could possibly exclude people who can't pay for what you offer? I mean, we're getting right into it right from the get-go, Rachel. Let's go.
Well, this has been a long journey. When I started 3 and 30, I didn't have the vision of it becoming a business that would support my family. I wanted to treat it seriously. I wanted to invest in learning about podcasting. And so in some ways, I treated it kind of like a startup from the beginning, where I did invest in like courses and things, but I really wasn't expecting it to become what it has as far as like a career for me. It
Yeah.
was just that I was a stay-at-home mom and I was feeling unfulfilled and missing teaching. I taught high school before and I just wanted to teach. And I thought I could start a show. I've always enjoyed, speaking in front of groups and teaching, and I could start a podcast. And so I did. And I think that's probably the experience of a lot of female entrepreneurs and a lot of the
Yes.
women you work with, that they start something to be fulfilling and as a hobby, and then it turns into something bigger and more than what they thought. And so over time, I realized, okay, I have a real business opportunity here, but I had to kind of undo a lot of the messaging that I had to give myself permission to make money, which I think for some reason I had sort of put in this box of like not a good thing to make money. And so I had to do a lot of work with that. In fact, I met with a business coach fairly early on, about 6 months into my podcast, Crystal Lee Beck from the Mama Ladder, who you
Love
may
her.
know. And yeah, she's wonderful. And she asked me what my goals were for our time together. And I listed off 3 or 4 goals. And she said, Rachel, not one of those has to do with making money. Like I didn't, and
She caught you.
it was like growing my audience, like all these different goals. And she's like, this is, if we're doing business coaching, do you want it to be a business or do you want it to be a hobby? Because either's fine. But like if
Either
you
is fine.
be a
Mhm.
business, then you have to be okay with making money. And what are your money goals? I was like, okay. So, and I've done a lot of work with that, figuring out where did that even come from, that I was uncomfortable with the idea of wanting to make money. Um, and I think a lot of it came down to, honestly, when I dug deep, that I felt that I had already been so richly blessed in my life that I didn't deserve to have any more blessings. Like I felt like it would be selfish
Yes.
to want more or to have more. And I had to realize that it wasn't selfish to want to support my family and contribute in a way that we can live according to our values. And like I wanted my husband to be able to work less, and he can now because I work. And so I had to see that having financial freedom wasn't selfish, that it could build the life that I wanted for our family. And it could also mean that I could give more to causes I was passionate about. And, so I'd like to say that from the beginning, this was easy for me, but it wasn't. It was a kind of a
Mm.
slow progression to figuring out. And now I'm very much like invested in building a business. And I realize that it's okay. But it's been almost 4 years since I started my show. And I'd say just in the last year, I've really come into like owning that I want this to be a business.
Oh, isn't that interesting that ownership, it changes the strategy, it changes the tone, it changes the
Yes.
day-to-day priorities. I mean, it is so different. And I'm going to pull something that you said right at the beginning. You said, I knew from the beginning that I was going to treat it seriously, even though you had some objections with money, that you were
Mm.
like, well, it doesn't mean it has to make money, but I'm going to treat it seriously. So how could you help our listeners distinguish between an entrepreneur who's maybe taking their business seriously and one who is treating it like a hobby? How did
Mm.
you treat it seriously?
Well, when I say that, I think what I mostly mean is that I realized that it was okay to invest in it.
Ah,
Um,
love
and
that.
even if it would have stayed as a hobby, it still was okay to invest in it. We invest in our children's hobbies all the time. And yet, as women, we feel like, we can't sign up for that continuing education class on podcasting or sign up for coaching or whatever because it's just a hobby. But it's okay to invest in education. And especially if you're building a business, then people invest all the time and put money in up front to build their businesses. And so I took it seriously in that I gave myself permission to invest time and money, to spend time away from my family working on it and not feel guilty about it. I put my daughter in a pretty much full day preschool, 4 days a week, so that I could work on the podcast and build it. And that came with its own whole thing of guilt that I had to overcome and realize that it was okay, that I wanted this outlet outside of motherhood.
Yeah.
And that those are all sort of the different ways that I invested up front in this work.
Oh, I love that. And I knew I had to have Rachel on here because she's so authentic that way. That you can say from the beginning, this was hard. This shift into a full day preschool, or this shift into investing into something that, you couldn't guarantee it would bring out money, but you knew it was for your soul or for your growth
Yes.
or something like that. That there was that leap of uncomfortable. We call it in the victorious journey, we call it the path to the right, going through the gate, like making a decision into something unknown, and the goal being growth, so I love that so much. And tell me, I'm just gonna be blunt with you, okay,
Yeah.
because this is something I've battled with. How have you gotten over the comments or even internal comments of, well, your husband is a dentist, why would you choose to add more onto your plate? Why would you choose to deal with the ins and outs of a business? Why would you choose to do those things when your husband is already able to provide XYZ? Have you
Yeah.
experienced that?
Yeah. And I think maybe a lot of it is more internal, my
Yes.
own criticism, And I think that it was a big struggle for me as a new mom when I realized that I didn't love stay-at-home motherhood as much as I thought that I would,
Mm.
because I really felt like, well, isn't this my divine role? Like, isn't this, and even like certain lines from the Proclamation of the Family would kind of haunt me. Like, a woman's role is to nurture. And I'm like, if this is my divine role, then why does it doesn't feel like it fits me? And I have since realized that nurturing comes in all sorts of different ways. And I am extremely nurturing, even though I didn't love full-time stay-at-home motherhood to little kids. But it was over several years that I sort of grappled with this desire to work and have my own thing. And was it righteous? And was it okay? And praying about it. And I finally just felt Heavenly Father saying to me, I created you the way that you are for a reason. I gave you these gifts and passions,
Yeah.
and it's okay to follow those. There's nothing wrong with you if you want to work part-time or full-time. And you can also have being primarily responsible for the nurture of my children also includes figuring out nurturing opportunities for them. Like, I am in charge of their nurture, meaning I am in charge of researching the opportunities, the preschool, the whatever. And I really had a turning point moment when my daughter's preschool teacher sent me a picture of her one day while I was working and she was at preschool. And it was a picture of my daughter holding a chicken, because she goes to this
Oh,
she went to this Waldorf preschool where they would give
yes.
bread and all this stuff. And I looked at this picture and you could just see the joy like emanating out of her face.
Mm.
And I thought, oh my gosh, she is thriving because, she is being nurtured by women who have skills and gifts and talents that I don't have. And I'm nurturing her in the ways that I'm good at. And her teachers are nurturing her in the ways
Mm.
that they're good at. And this has only blessed her life to bring more people in to nurture her. And it was
Oh,
this permission to just be the kind of mom that I want, that I was designed to be, which included working for me. So going back to your original question, it's not really about the financial piece for us, because my husband does have a good job. Does have a job that can support our family. All jobs are good jobs, but does have a
right.
job that is, would make it so that I don't have to work. I want to work. I love my work and I find great fulfillment in it. And like I also said at the beginning of the interview, because I work, we've been able to be more flexible with his schedule. He's had so much more time with the kids. And going back to the proclamation, I really feel like in our home, Ryan and I have taken on all of those roles outlined together. Like, we
Yeah.
both provide, we both nurture, it's a true partnership, and it is what works for us. I'm not saying that has to be how it is for everyone, but for us, it feels so good to feel like we're both doing
Oh,
both sides, both roles.
and I hope the listeners here are feeling what I'm feeling, in the sense that, do you sense the confidence, the inner confidence and peace that Rachel is talking about? That she went through the process of grappling like
Oh, so
saying,
much
wait a
grappling.
minute, so much grappling. That's how I found you, is you admitting to your grappling. But watching this process to say, okay, I am sitting here with a new baby, and we'll talk about how that new baby came in just a minute, but holding this new baby and being like, why am I not just headed for the hills singing with such joy that this is what I was called to do? Like that kind of a struggle. And then realizing that on the other side of it was grappling, seeking for truth, receiving personal truth directly from the divine. And then that peace came, and you're probably, and I'm putting words in your mouth, you're probably now more fulfilled in motherhood than
Oh,
you ever thought possible because of that process.
1000%. I mean, I I am so much more fulfilled when I am happy, and so my kids are happy. I'm like, I am
Mhm.
living into my gifts, and so I have more gifts to give them and more love to give them, and I'm modeling for them how to live into their gifts. And I'm learning so many cool things about parenting from my actual content,
Yeah.
that I can then put into practice. There's no doubt at all that I am a way better mom because of 3 and 30 than I would have been without it, if I would have continued to sort of squash that voice, that inner longing, that inner knowing that was saying, it's okay if you do this, it's okay.
Oh,
Even if it means a little bit more time away from your children, it's okay if you do this.
oh, it's okay if you do this. That kind of inner peace is priceless, absolutely priceless. And as our listeners know, we talk so much about this victorious journey. And spoiler alert, the very last stage, the ninth stage of the victorious journey, is called the Advent. It's called the return or the Advent.
Mm.
And it's so different from the hero's journey, in which the victress actually, she returns to the feminine, is kind of what it's originally called. And it is that return to what actually made her escape in the first place, and that desire to maximize that part of her feminine that she was trying to escape. And Rachel, it happens to everyone. I have
Yeah.
not been able to find an example where this person tried to kind of escape it and then found themselves returning to it and being so much better at it as a
Yeah.
mother, as a nurturer. That's been your experience.
100%. I mean, that captures it perfectly, that I was sort of desperate to escape motherhood. I was in a low, low place, and my babies are, my son was adopted and my daughter was conceived with IVF. So I had fought hard for these babies, and I had told myself, I'm going to love every minute of this. And then the devastation of realizing I don't love this as much as I thought I would in this way, in this form. It's not that I didn't love motherhood. It
Yes.
was the stay-at-home motherhood piece. It was, the little children with so many needs that I felt ill-equipped to meet, that was so, so hard for me. And then, but now you're right. Like, there's a returning to, I am obsessed with my motherhood now.
Yes.
I love my kids so much, and not just them. I love the way I do motherhood now. It's so fulfilling to me because I went through this journey of kind of figuring out my own way of doing it.
Oh, so Rachel, I mean, the message is, don't be afraid of the journey ahead. Don't be afraid of the short escape. Don't be afraid of the grappling. Don't be afraid of committing through the gate. Because what is always on the other side is the deliverer and the Advent, the
Mm,
return to
it's
that
so
thing that you
beautiful.
loved. Oh, I'm just dying. My heart is like exploding. Okay,
Yeah.
so can I ask you about these babies of yours? Okay,
Yeah,
they're
of
not
course.
babies like right at
No,
this
my
moment,
son is
but
almost 10 and I still call
okay.
them my babies. That's ridiculous. But yes,
Because
please.
you're obsessed with your motherhood in this
And
form.
I'm
That's
obsessed
why.
with them. I really am. So,
So this, and I'll just full blown admit this, that this question was actually submitted from a fan of yours. Okay.
okay.
And when I was talking to them about what do you want to know from Rachel Nielsen, and after 80 different options of to pick from, I thought this was such a raw question. And I do have permission, by the way, listeners, to ask her this. So you battled with infertility for forever, just
Hmm.
forever, and you could not have babies on your own. And so you were looking at the adoption, IVF, that obviously was in your future. The question was, how do you manage going through the absolute devastating, unexpected events of life like that? This is before you got your boy through
Hmm.
adoption. And how do you not let it totally consume you? But second, how do you not take it as a sign that God is disappointed and
Mm.
is withholding blessings? Because, like, you're called to be a mom, right? Like,
Yeah.
What was that kind of grapple like for you?
Yeah. I'm like closing my eyes and trying to like put myself back to that 10 years ago, you know? It's
Yeah.
so, because once you have your blessings, sometimes you can forget just hard, how hard it was. It was so devastating. And in many ways, I feel like it was all consuming. That desire and that I remember spending, hours and hours reading blogs of women who were adopting when we were going through the adoption process to just sort of get, because none of my friends had adopted, and to sort of figure out or get a picture of what my life might look like. And it was very all consuming. Um, but I also think that that's okay in certain phases of life. Like, you don't need to feel guilty or bad about being totally consumed by something that is hard, that you're going through. I do think that it helped me a lot to have something outside of that one desire. So I was teaching high school and was very passionate and very good at my job. I loved it and it fulfilled like I was using my gifts, just like we
Yeah.
talked about earlier. And so even though I was consumed by infertility, I also had this other outlet that made me feel really confident and strong. And so I feel like for women to have something that they really love that they can pour into is especially important when they're going through a really all-consuming trial like infertility, that they have at least some outlet, and for a lot of women listening, it might be, if this is their particular struggle is infertility, it might be secondary infertility. And that can be such a struggle because it can be unexpected if you didn't struggle before. Whereas I always knew from the time I was a teenager that would be hard for me to get pregnant. In some ways, I'm grateful that I kind of had that emotional warning or that emotional preparation versus some of my friends who've just totally blindsided. They're like, why isn't this working? And so if you are a mom listening and you already have children, but you're going through this, and I would say to just be really mindful of having some outlets that are just fulfilling and fun and taking really good care of yourself while you're going through this trial, as well as leaning in really hard into the spiritual piece of your life, your beliefs, your connection to God. I really think that is the closest I've ever felt to God, was during that year, those few years, because I was so desperate. Whereas like in other parts of our lives, we're like, I'm pretty good. I'm doing good. And,
True.
I was like praying and reading and searching. And I don't know that I ever felt that I was being punished, but I definitely felt angry at God sometimes. And I have a vivid memory of one night when we found out that an adoption that we were hoping for, that we had been chosen by this expectant mom, wasn't going to happen. She chose a different couple. I was so mad and devastated. I mean, I was devastated, but it was coming out as anger. At God. And I remember sort of saying to him, like, why did I feel so good about this if this wasn't going to work out? Why, I got the impression to move forward with this expectant mom. I got the impression that it was the right thing and it didn't work out. And I'm so mad at you and I'm not going to pray. And I like kind of did my little temper tantrum and just got in bed and cried myself to sleep. And I sort of feel like it's that, you've heard that story about the currant bush by Hugh B. Brown, where he talks about like shaking his fist at heaven, I think is what he says. Like, how could you have done this to me? And I remember reading that story and being like, that was my currant bush moment, where I was mad and I was like, I'm not going to pray tonight,
Yeah.
And
if you're not going to help, I'm not going to talk.
And I really feel like Heavenly Father is like, it's okay. Like, if you don't pray tonight, I'm not like this vengeful God up here that's like, well, if you're not going to pray, he's like, you are hurting so much. And even if you don't pray, I'm still here and I still love you. And I'm right here, for you. And so I think feeling whatever emotions you feel, just feel them and go through them and process them. And God is with you even when you're super mad at him and yelling at him in a prayer.
Oh my gosh. And did you ever, this is so beautiful, Rachel, and thank you for your honesty on the anger that came out of that. And how do you again face head on the idea that this is a good thing? Wanting to have a
Mm,
baby and adopt this baby is a good thing. Or I mean, I'm thinking of our entrepreneurs. Many of them are either trying to get into a certain school, or they're trying to have babies, or um, they're trying to make things happen that will benefit God's work. You
mm,
having a baby will benefit God's work, no doubt, right?
mm.
Because you're obsessed with motherhood now, right? And so how do you distance God in that sense that, oh, this is just life happening, or this is something God allowed to happen? Or what, the unexpected is such a battle for women.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I grappled a lot back then with the idea of, does God make this happen to us, or
Yeah.
does he allow it? Because it is true. Like, if this is a good thing, if this would bless your kingdom, why, you can start to think, why are you withholding it from me?
Right.
But I don't think God is withholding anything from us. I think that we live in a fallen world, and we have
Mm.
fallen bodies that sometimes don't do what we want them to do, you know? And so I feel like I sort of came to the conclusion during that time that God doesn't make these things happen to us so much as allow them to and stand right there with us. I thought about the metaphor of, like, if a child is learning how to walk and they fall down the stairs, like, as a parent, you would never, like, shove your kids down the stairs and be like, it's good for you and you're going to be stronger after.
Yeah,
But
true.
if your kid did fall down the stairs, you would run to them and help them and give them the support because of gravity. If they fell down the stairs because of gravity. So I sort of thought about, like, we live in a fallen world where sometimes we fall down the stairs because of natural laws, because of natural bodies, whatever. But God didn't push us down the stairs. He's right there, like, to help us and support us. And the coolest thing is to, like, give us beauty for ashes. Like, he'll take whatever happens to us and make it something beautiful, even if he didn't necessarily intend for that thing to happen. He's like, okay, well, how can I make this the absolute, how can I work things together for her good? How can I make this the absolute best outcome that it can be, in spite of this hard thing that happened?
And
You
you've
know, and
seen that.
oh, I mean, if I would have been able to get pregnant, I wouldn't have Noah. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, like, adoption is a really cool one because you can, like, actually, a lot of trials in life you can't so explicitly tie back to.
Yeah.
But with adoption, I'm like, I always tell Noah, I'm like, I am so grateful my body didn't work, because now I have you. I am so grateful that those other adoption opportunities fell through, that I wanted to work out so much, because you were on your way. And so that's why those other things couldn't happen. I really do think God makes beauty from ashes, and adoption and infertility is the best way I've ever been able to see that in my life.
Oh, that's extraordinary. And you're just making me reflect. I served 6 months in the Detroit, Michigan mission, and I
Mhm.
broke my pelvic bone 6 months in and had to come home and never went back on a mission. And that was my tantrum moment. It was,
Mm,
I thought serving as a missionary would be the greatest thing ever for your work. Why would you send me home? And it was the
yes.
timing of that allowed me to get the job that allowed me to get Greg. I mean, it's so clear now, the beauty
Yes.
from the ashes that happen. But man, in
Yes.
that moment, it's just impossible to know what is in
Yeah.
store. I love how beautifully you talk about the Savior's role in when we fall down the stairs. His role is to support and sit right by and help heal. And it's beautiful. Absolutely
Yes.
beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, so no doubt you have been through the ringer in so many things. We've got dental school under our belt, we've got infertility, we've got adoption, we've got IVF, so many incredible experiences. Can I talk to you about your business for a minute?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you have had, if I've got my numbers right, you have had a pretty explosive last year. True?
Yes. Last 2020 was the first year that I was profitable, and it was dramatic, like, very profitable compared to the other years I hadn't made money. I just broken even investing in my business, investing everything I made back into my business. So 2020 was a big year for me.
Oh, first, congratulations. Yay.
Thank you.
It's exciting to have a year like that under your belt. And let me ask you, if you were to target two, maybe even three things, because three is very much more your number, three things that you feel like made the difference in 2020 to make that business explode financially.
Mm-hmm. Well, I definitely know one thing. And then I'll have to think if I have two more. Yeah. The biggest thing was my Flecks of Gold journal. So, and to make that a more generalized principle, the biggest thing was having a product, something that I had to invest in creating upfront that then could continue to be sold without, like, now it's an evergreen product. Like, it's just on sale all the time. It was a minimum investment upfront of, well, actually, I wouldn't say minimum. It was a big investment up front of time and also money, because I had to buy all the journals before I could sell the journals. But I just didn't have any idea how much a blessing to my business it would be to have something that I could sell over and over and over again. So before that, it was all money from sponsorships and from workshops. But those were things that required constant effort to do. Like, I had to find the new sponsorship. I had to produce the podcast. I had to teach the workshop. And so having this kind of more passive income with this product made a huge difference. But I put it off for years because I was like, well, I don't have time to create that because I'm churning out content. I'm churning out episodes. And so when would I have time to create my product? And now looking back on it, I'm like, I should have paused all that stuff to create my product, to get a revenue generating machine going, and then started back in with all of the content creation and stuff, because it just made such a huge difference to have that thing I could sell over and over and over again. Yeah, I'm sure you can explain this way better.
This is so good. And can I ask you another question about it? Yeah. Okay, this actual thing. So, okay, business term that she is using is evergreen. Okay. Evergreen is just the definition of a product or goods that can be sold anytime around the clock. Amazon is an evergreen product. Stop. That's what it is. Okay. That's where you go.
You don't have to like launch it's not like a digital product where you have a launch period and then it closes for a long time. And it's just always available to people. When they find it, they can buy it.
I love it. I love it. And so my question about that is twofold. Number one, there are 4 billion journals out there. Okay. It's a pretty crowded market. Okay.
Yes.
What made Flecks of Gold successful?
So the first thing is that I knew I had sort of had a test market where I knew, and that was somewhat inadvertent, but so I taught this Flecks of Gold concept. And for people who aren't familiar with it, the idea behind this was, well, when Noah was a new baby and I had fought so hard for him and thought I would love every minute, and then he was super colicky and I was super depressed, and I heard the talk by M. Russell Ballard where he tells the story of Flecks of Gold, and it was a general conference talk. And he talked about a miner that in the California gold rush went out, was expecting to strike it rich and find these huge golden nuggets, and got super discouraged when he just wasn't finding anything. He was about to go home because he wasn't finding gold. And an elderly prospector came by and said, there's gold here. You just have to know where to look for it. And the old man cracked open the rocks that this guy the miner had been throwing aside. He cracked them open and showed him that there were little flecks of gold that he could mine out, and that they would accumulate to be great wealth if he just focused on the flecks of gold instead of looking for like the mother lode, And I heard that as a new mom, and it was the talk that was actually not even it wasn't about motherhood or anything else. It was about finding joy from loving service, which is totally different. But I mean, I guess that's not that different from motherhood, but
is it?
Yeah. But I was like, oh my gosh, I need to start looking for flecks of gold with my baby. I need to find like I was expecting motherhood to be this cotton candy, rainbows, and skipping through the fields every day. And it's hard, but there's still flecks of gold. And so I started sort of looking and writing them down and mining them out and writing them down. So I shared this concept in a talk I gave at the I Am Mom Summit several years ago, the flecks of gold. And after, I probably got 100 emails from women asking me what I used to write down. Like, they're like, what journal do you use? Do you have a specific place? Do you? And so that was my first, like, oh, women would want this. So it was like a
Brilliant.
product that I knew there would be interest because of the reaction, that the emails that I got. So then I kind of had another test market, if you will, because before I had created the journal, I taught a couple workshops and taught the flecks of gold concept. And I gave the women in attendance just like a generic 5-year journal that I got on Amazon. That was, it wasn't ideal for what I wanted, but it was good enough. And so I had this test group that was doing the flecks of gold concept in a journal that wasn't specifically branded for that. And so then I had people to talk to about, okay, what if you could change it? How would you change it so that it would be better? When I make my product, what should I do? More space to write. They gave me this feedback, and they could also give me testimonials because they were doing it. So then when I launched it, I had a really solid idea of what was going to work because of kind of these little test things I had done along the way that I had to be looking for and kind of aware of. And then, so it was a really successful first launch because of all of that.
Okay. So I have a question about your launch. Okay. Yeah. Because, and listeners, again, let's point out some of the things that you've heard. Number one, she created a product based upon what her audience wanted. And she never could have known that had she not already started a business. We take our best guess of what our audience wants when we start a business. And then as we grow a business, we serve the audience that we have. And that's the most surefire way to move forward. She got those 100 emails and she said, there is something here. This. Yes. So look for that moment, my awesome entrepreneurs. Okay. And my second question really is about your launch because it was everywhere, my friend. It was absolutely everywhere. And one of the challenges entrepreneurs face is, how do I approach other people? So we call it borrowing traffic, right? How do I approach people on Instagram or YouTubers or podcasters and say, hey, I've got this cool product. Like, will you talk about it? Like, I'll give you some money for it. Like, what was that experience for you? I know a lot of these women were friends of yours, but what if they have less impactful friends? How do you get it off the ground? How do you ask?
Okay. So I think this question is excellent, and it's kind of two parts. My answer is kind of two parts because I had been cultivating these relationships for a really long time. And so that would be my first thing. Would be, you need to be cultivating relationships, and not just in a way that's one-sided where you're like, maybe if I buddy up to this person, they'll eventually share my product, but really like investing in the people that you relate to on Instagram that you can see would be a kindred spirit, that maybe aren't in the exact field as you, but something that's kind of parallel, and commenting on their stuff and supporting them and spotlighting them in some way. And I had done 150 interviews so I had these years of, which was a total plus, because then I could go back to all those women who I had a relationship with because I'd interviewed them and say, can I send you a journal? And if you like it, will you share it? And I'm very cognizant to the fact that people get asked to share a lot of stuff. So when I mean it when I say to people, if it fits in your content calendar, if you love it, no pressure at all. I just want to give this to you as a gift because I love you. And I mean that. And I think people can feel that versus being approached and having it be sort of like an ad, a business transaction where people are like, I will send you a journal if you share it. Right. And I'm like, that's so different than, I'd love to give you a gift because you've impacted my journey. And if you want to share it, I would be thrilled, but no pressure, so
be normal, be a human.
Yeah. And be genuine. and, really reach out to the people that have impacted you and tell them that, and then tell them about your product and see what happens. And so I think the first half to my answer is build those relationships first, long before you have the product or whatever. But the second part of my answer is, if you're like, well, I didn't do that and I'm already, I have got the product. Then I would say just approach people who you genuinely respect. What I just said, tell them how they've impacted you, even if you have no relationship with them whatsoever. Tell them how they've impacted you, and ask about, if they share product, if you can just get it to them without an expectation of sharing, if they have rates. Be respectful of the fact that these people have put years into building their platforms. And
it's a business.
It's a business, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes people reach out to me on Instagram and it feels kind of entitled. They're like I told you, they say, I'll give it to you if you'll share it. And there's just like no sense of, I really respect the community that you've built over years of time. It's just kind of this more entitled ask. So I think the way you approach that is really powerful.
Oh, I love it. I will never forget one of my mentors said, the greatest gift someone can give you is their audience. And to treat it that way, know that you are asking for their most prized possession. That is their audience, because they have spent years. So I think wonderful advice, a wonderful way to move through. So we are approaching the end here of our interview.
I could talk to you all day. I'm like,
there's got to be a part 2.
Sorry, Sarah.
There's got to be a part 2. Will you come back? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I will come back.
I love this. So I really have one final question for you. And that is to just pep talk, Rachel, pep talk of the women that are feeling forgotten, that are feeling like they're playing small, that are feeling like that they're meant for more, regardless of their motherhood status or anything like that. What is your message to them to help them see what the Savior has in store for them?
I would say to remember how much your impact matters, regardless of the size of the impact, and that the lives that you are touching and changing, every single one of those matters. I think as entrepreneurs and in this world of social media, we can get so discouraged by numbers, by amount of impact. And we all do it. We all sometimes get caught in that trap. But remember that behind every single comment, follow, like, is a real person. So, even if you're feeling like only 300 people follow me on Instagram, that is 300 people. That is real, live, breathing mothers that you are impacting. And that is huge. And just to really lean into and remember the humanity and the divinity of every single person that you serve, and thinking about the gift that you're giving them, is powerful. And to, if at all possible, and I know it's so much easier said than done, quiet the noise of big and think more about deep. Like, what am I doing in my business that I can deeply impact, even if I'm never reaching tens and hundreds of thousands of people? You can have deep impact, and you can make you can have really good income without having a humongous audience if you are serving well and serving deeply. And the world needs your voice. Those women need your work. God gave you the desires that are in your heart for a reason, to do whatever it is you feel called to do, because he has specific people who need you. And it doesn't matter if there are 8 billion journal companies. There are some women that need the Flecks of Gold journal specifically. There are some people that need your podcast specifically out of the hundreds of podcasts that are out there. So just remember that, God can use you and will use you in individuals' lives. That's my pep talk.
Oh, Rachel, we are soul sisters. We are seriously soul sisters. I am so grateful for you. I am so grateful for your impact in my personal life.
Oh, thank you so much.
My personal life. You talk about reaching the one. I am one of those that you have reached and impacted. and helped me embrace and get passionate about motherhood. And so even if the one is me, I'm grateful for the efforts that you've put into your message and the things you've grappled with, because it has blessed the world in so many ways.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. And I feel the exact same way about you. You really have the most contagious enthusiasm.
You are kind.
And I need it. I need that. Sometimes I need someone that can just, I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast feels that way, like a pump up, like what do they call that? Like a girl that like goes in front of you and cheers you on. There's a word for that. A cheer girl or something. That's you. So thank you for being all of our cheer girl.
Amazing. Well, if you need more of Rachel in your life, which you all do, there's a couple places that you can go. You can DM her on Instagram. We're going to link all of this in the show notes, so just scroll down. Find her on the 3 in 30 podcast on all major podcast platforms. You will find her there. Download it, subscribe, rate, review, the whole thing as her message reaches the world. We're just so grateful you were here. And thanks again so much for listening to the podcast. Hey you, thanks for listening to the Victorous Podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Sarah Grace Live. You can also find us on YouTube under the same name. If what you listened to today really, really resonated with you, would you rate and review it for us, please? That is the biggest, most important thing that you could do to show your support for the message that we're sharing here. So glad to have you as part of the Victorous Podcast community. The Victorous Podcast is written, produced by me, Sarah Grace, edited by Rachel Johnston, and spread across social media by Mikkel Davis and Brittany Jones. Super grateful for the Sarah Grace Live team.